Amen.
All right, so with no further ado, we have a guest speaker tonight. He's Detective Thomas Adams. Now, he's age 50, and his personal bio, I'm just going to read it. He's been married for 29 years to a special woman. They have 2 beautiful daughters, both grown now. They also have a very handsome dog named Murphy, who they treat like a third child. His interests are weight training, watching a wide variety of sports. Are you a Cowboys fan?
Yes, sir.
Dallas Cowboy fan?
Oh, yeah, I heard him say yeah.
All right, I got you. So he's a Dallas Cowboy fan, so we like him already. All right. And so also he attends live music concerts. He enjoys ice cream, peach cobbler, and traveling. His education, he has a bachelor's degree in intelligence with a focus on terrorism studies from the American Military University. All right. His work history, he served 6 years in the United States Army working on Apache helicopters. Then he spent 11 years as a military contractor training U.S. and foreign military pilots and maintenance personnel how to operate equipment on the Apache helicopter. He then joined the Austin Police Department as a cadet in 2011. After graduating the academy, he served on patrol with various sectors of the city for 8 years, mainly North Central, Austin, and downtown bar districts. Oh, wow, the bar districts, yeah, okay. He was promoted to the rank of corporal detective. He's been investigating child exploitation for 4 years. Currently, he's a member of the APD Child Exploitation Unit, as well as a member of the Internet Crimes Against Children Task Force as an affiliate to the Office of the Attorney General. The cases he investigates are online solicitation of minors, sextortation, that's a new one, okay. Sexting depicting minors. He also serves as possession of promotion of child pornography. Also, he investigates visual recordings of juvenile victims. So I guess all that to say is, he's going to tell us about, the crimes against children, which is very important in today's society. We have a lot of youth, and the youth are being, as we say, lured into these websites and stuff like that. So I'm sure he's going to tell us all about that. So with no further ado, I'm going to bring up our guest speaker, and the floor is yours, sir.
Thank you all for having me here today. I'll try not to talk too loud, I'm sorry. I'm pretty much not in there, so love that little guy. I appreciate everybody having me here today. Once again, my name is Detective Thomas Adams. I've been investigating cases for child exploitation for about 4 years now. Do everything from, like you said, the child pornography, which we've started rebranding as what they call CSAM, which is child sexual abuse material. The reason why they're starting to kind of move in that direction is with today's day and age, the terminology of pornography has gotten very, it's everywhere today. And now it's become a term that everybody uses, and it doesn't really mean much to a lot of people anymore. And then just putting the word child in front of it doesn't give it the impact that it needs, right? So when you rebrand something to child sexual abuse material, it actually brings it to the forefront and makes people go, oh, that sounds really bad, because it really is. Mainly in my unit, the cases that I investigate are going to be the cases involving online solicitation of a minor. Those cases really are pretty much centered around children online, on their phones, using the apps, and doing stuff each and every day that we as parents, we don't know what's going on, we don't see. And then a lot of times it's just because, we have busy lives, we're off working, doing things in the evening, getting dinner ready, supper ready, and kids are in their rooms, they're surfing around, they've got so much free time, and it's hard to keep up with it, right? A little backstory is, so my 2 daughters are grown, and Facebook, Instagram, stuff like that was just starting to become a thing years ago when they were teenagers. And the first thing that my wife did was she made a kind of a thing that said, okay, whatever app that my daughters are downloading and creating their own little profiles. My wife was going to download the same app and required our daughters to friend them or friend her so she could see everything that they post from their social media sites. That works about 95% of the time because your kids are smart and probably smarter than you on social media. They spend more time on it than you do, and they know how to operate it better than you do. So we have to be diligent as parents to really learn what our kids are using and what they're involved in each and every day. And mainly it's because besides the predators, and I'm going to use that term because that's what they are, okay? The adults that are seeking your children out, they're predators. And besides the predators, your kids are using these apps for other things. Bullying, getting bullied in school, things like that, that we find out later after things have gone really badly and your kids are having bad incidents at school. Maybe it's affecting their grades, I don't know. But social media is a really big thing, and that's what these cases that I investigate are really centered around. So we'll get kind of started here. See if I can make sure I'm gonna get this thing working right. There it is. May have gone too many here. I did. I went way too far. Did I go back or am I going forward? Am I going forward or backward? Okay, let me go back. I'm sorry. Little learning curve. Okay, here we go. All right, so a little background about our unit. We're the Child Exploitation Unit. We're part of Organized Crime Division. We originally were part of the Human Trafficking Unit, where we were working their cases. They were kind of assisting on some of ours. But we discovered that our caseload is actually larger than human trafficking's caseload, not because they don't get those kind of cases, but the nature of the way human trafficking works. Their cases take a lot longer to work. Their cases are more in depth as far as interviewing live victims. And our cases, by and large, are more internet-based, and they come in larger numbers. So we decided that we needed to be able to focus on our cases, and they needed to be able to focus on theirs, so we separated the two units. And so now our unit consists of one sergeant. We have 7 detectives, and that's 7 detectives city and area-wide. We actually take some cases that reach outside the city limits of Austin. We are affiliated with the Attorney General's Office, and ICAC stands for Internet Crimes Against Children, and we're part of that task force. The resources we use are NCMEC, and they provide cyber tips, and I've got some slides later that kind of really explain what NCMEC does and who they are. We're part of the Dallas-Fort Worth / Texas Attorney General's Office task force. And we actually have the Attorney General's Office as, they're a really good tool for us because they have detectives, and the way their detectives work is they investigate these same crimes, but they investigate the crimes statewide for smaller communities that don't have their own child exploitation units. So when you think about some of the small communities in South Texas, some of the communities up in way West Texas, they are the ones that handle it statewide. So our Child Exploitation Unit is part of the ICAC. And what is ICAC? It's the Internet Crimes Against Children Task Force Program. It is a national network of 61 coordinated task forces engaged in proactive and reactive investigations, forensic examinations, and criminal prosecutions. The reason why the proactive and reactive are highlighted, when you're talking about online solicitation or child pornography or any of the other stuff, sextortion, those type of cases, most of the time we're looking at reactive stuff. Detectives are in their office. We get cases that are brought to us by people that make 911 calls. They're at home. They discover something on their child's phone, probably some communication between the parent or between the child and some random predator that Nobody knows where he lives, or where he's at, but he's out there in cyberspace. So they make a 911 phone call. We respond out with patrol officers. They take the report, and then next thing you know, we're investigating. That's reactive. That's after the fact. Proactive is we're actually starting, a lot of other agencies do it. Our agency is now starting to be able to do it because we're starting to have more officers or detectives. What we do is we create these social media accounts, whether it's on Snapchat, Instagram. Usually it's on something like, I don't know if any of y'all are familiar with Kik or Telegram. Those are chatting sites, stuff like that. Well, we'll create a profile that's fake, obviously, and we'll pose as 13, 14 years old. And we'll just set that profile out there and let it hover around. And that profile, as soon as somebody hits on it, and we'll start chatting and find out, is this an adult or is this a child? If we've determined that it's an adult that's messaging us, we'll keep messaging. We'll let the adult talk with us, chat with us, and see where it goes. If it starts to turn towards an inappropriate nature, we'll message back, but with all of our chatting, we have to stay on the up and up. We cannot lure them in. They have to incriminate themselves. They have to do all of the stuff that would basically show that they are trying to reach out to this child for an inappropriate nature, whether it's to solicit photos or a live meetup or something along those natures. That's proactive. Proactive is actually getting out there and trying to let the predators incriminate themselves. And what we investigate, primarily our priorities include the possession and promotion of child sexual abuse material. That's the main cases that our unit investigates just because there's so much of it. And when I say there's so much of it, we have so many cases that come in from cyber tips that we can only work so many. So we work the ones that are the worst. And if there's only like 1 or 2 images that are on someone's account, those may not get worked just because we have some come in with hundreds and thousands of images on their accounts. Some of the other cases, this sextortion, sexting depicting a minor. One of the things we're getting a lot of, and I'm actually working quite a few of those cases, is people will friend a juvenile on some social media app, and what they'll do is they'll do the grooming. Y'all have heard the term grooming. They'll work on the grooming, which is getting the child to feel like they're friends, and this person is really a nice person, and I can trust this person. And then it leads to a more nefarious kind of attitude where now it gets into, hey, maybe you can share an image or two with me, and stuff like that. So once the image has been shared, and it's an image of, sexual contact or content, the person they were chatting with turns right around. They've already done their research. They know all of the friends that child has on their social media sites and who their friends are at school. And they turn around and say, send me more pictures or send me money, or I'm going to tell all your friends. And I'm going to share this with everybody, and I'm going to ruin you at school or ruin your reputation. Or they even sometimes say, I will tell your parents, and then your parents will be so angry with you. And they try and turn the kids against the parents or make the kids hide stuff from their parents. So that's the nefarious side of the sextortion. They get the material, and now they're using it against the child so that they can either get more material or they can get money. And believe it or not, I've worked cases where the kids, and I don't know where they're getting the money, but the kids have Venmo'd random people $200, $300 to keep these photos from getting out there. Well, what happens when you send the $200 or $300? They want more. So it never stops. So if anything like this happens, and God forbid that it does, to you young kids, don't think that you're going to be able to buy these people off, and don't think that you're ever going to be able to get them to stop. The first thing you do is you tell your parents, and then their parents need to call the police so that we can get this person stopped, because they won't stop. And then They'll just keep going. They'll either want more money or more photos. So then we have the online solicitation of a minor. That's different from sextortion because that's not about money or images for the purpose of making money. That's for the purpose of their own deviant nature. So when you look at the online solicitation of a minor, they're either wanting to physically meet up with the child, or they want the images of the child so that they can have them for their own personal use at home. We have criminal solicitation of a minor, invasive visual recording of a juvenile. So that one's labeled different. We have invasive visual recording for adults, and we all kind of know what that is. You know, you're in the dressing room and somebody slides a camera in. Well, the same thing happens to a juvenile. We don't get a lot of those cases just because most people that are willing to record a juvenile are usually probably willing to go one step further. So they're not there just to record the juvenile, so we don't get a lot of those kind of cases. Sale or purchase of a child, believe it or not, there are people out there that have sold their own child for money, not necessarily trafficking like sex-wise or work, labor-wise, but just, hey, I need some money, here's my kid, how much will you pay for it? And then we have the interdiction for the protection of children. So that one's a little bit more obscure, and we don't use that one that often. Oh, here we go. So a little definition of what is child pornography. Child pornography is a form of child sexual exploitation that is any visual depiction or sexually explicit conduct involving a minor. So real quick, there is a difference between child pornography and child nudity. And there's a distinction by law for a reason. It protects family members and parents for when you take those cute little photos of your kids swimming in the bathtub, or if your daughter is having a slumber party and they're sitting there in their panties and they're beating each other with pillows or whatever, I don't know, whatever, and some photos are taken, that protects the parents from just having just a naked picture, okay? That's not child pornography. Child pornography is when the image itself focuses in on the genitalia or there's a sex act involved, okay? The part of this is where it says the person knowingly or intentionally possesses or knowingly intentionally accesses with intent to view visual material usually depicts a child younger than 18. So if you're 17 and younger, you fall under the juvenile part of this for a child. And then the time and the image was made. So if you were 17 and you had on your birthday is tomorrow, but you took a picture today and you turn 18 tomorrow, that's still considered child pornography or a video was made. All right, so the thing about it is where on the here it says intentionally accesses with intent to view. If someone searches the internet and they put in the search terms, little children, I don't know, think of something sexually explicit, but you're searching specifically for it. If you search for it and an image pops up that's actually child pornography, that's violation of law right there immediately. Doesn't matter whether you download it physically to your hard drive or whether you save it to your phone. If you search it and you view the image, you've committed a crime. So where do we find child pornography? The biggest place we find it is on the offenders, the predators' cell phones. Everybody's got them. They've got huge amounts of storage space nowadays, and believe it or not, these predators that are purveyors of child pornography, they like to keep their stuff close to them. It's a weird thing in their nature, but they like to keep all of their stuff close by. We find it on computers in their homes. We find it on gaming units like Xboxes and PlayStations. And we find it on flash drives, just like I used to upload this PowerPoint. So you can even find it on the little drives that go into these cameras, those little bitty small ones. So anywhere where you can store something, there are people out there, and if y'all heard of the dark web, the dark web is not like www dot blah, 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 blah. It's a different side of the World Wide Web that's only accessible through certain browsers. And there are people that are operating in the dark web that have terabytes of child pornography, and they are using it, and they're making money off of selling it and trading it, and it's big business for a lot of these people. So then we get into what really is our focus here today, okay? And this is the online solicitation of a minor. It occurs when a person over the internet, by electronic mail, through text messages, or any other commercial online service, an app on your phone, knowingly solicits a minor to meet another person, including the actor, with the intent that the minor will engage in sexual contact, sexual intercourse, or deviant sexual intercourse with the actor or another person. It is not a defense that the meeting might or did not occur. So if they're sitting there chatting back and forth about, hey, let's meet up, and the child says, and when I say child, I'm talking about teenagers, because obviously a 4 or 5 year old is not going to be, getting out of the house and meeting up at the movie theater, right? But if they set up a meeting, and let's say the child gets cold feet and backs out, doesn't matter. The intent was there, the discussion about meetup was there, and if it had any kind of a sexual connotation at all, that's enough for us to prosecute. Another side of this solicitation of a minor is it's not up here, but it's not necessarily about meetups. If you share sexual material or sexual language, messaging back and forth from an adult to a child, and they have to know that they're talking with a child. So if they're texting and the child's texting and there's no mention of age whatsoever, we can't prosecute that, because we can't say, well, that guy knowingly knew he was talking to someone under the age of 18. However, in all the cases I've worked, the guys will generally ask, because that's their thing. They want to be talking to someone that's under the age of 18. That's the reason why they're there. So it doesn't do them any good to chat back and forth with someone that may be 18, 19, 20 years old. And most of the time it's kind of obvious, but it still has to be specifically stated. But when you click on an Instagram account, most of the kids that are under the age of 18 have their own photo on there. So you know almost immediately who you're talking to, or they have a emblem of something in their little bio profiles that shows that they're into certain things that only kids would be into, right? So most of these guys are already targeting what they're looking for. They're not just randomly reaching out to just anybody's Instagram. They know who are the children. They're reaching out to those kids. Am I doing something wrong? I could be. I don't know. Online predators focus their attention on children who respond to them first and foremost, right? So if they reach out and the child is like, hey, how are you doing? Right back. Well, now we've got lines of communication established. Let's see where this goes. They also like vulnerable children. By vulnerable, I mean children who are possibly living in bad homes, broken homes, children who are going through mental health crises, children with mental health disabilities. So they're looking for anything that gives them a leg in to say, hey, I'm the good guy here. I feel bad for what's going on to you, or going on with you. And so they prey on that. And then children who are attention seeking and affection seeking. Believe it or not, a lot of children out there, they just want the attention. They just want somebody to notice them. I mean, look at Facebook. We gauge how much people like us by how many likes we get, right? So, if you don't get more than, I don't know, a couple of hundred or whatever many likes, then I posted that and only 25 people liked it. Dang. Right? So our kids are no different, right? They're looking for that attention. They want it, right? And if they're not getting it from the parents or from their friends, they're going to find it somewhere else. Excuse me, I'm getting a little dry mouth. Hold on a second. So here's kind of the definition of your solicitation of a minor. This is kind of a little bit of what we get out of the penal code, right? It's not the whole thing. The whole thing would take up a lot more, but this is the gist of it. This is a person who is 17 years of age or older commits an offense with the intent to commit an offense listed in Article 6, and don't get into the weeds about what Article 62, B and K, and just know that, Code of Criminal Procedure, the person over the internet by electronic mail or text message or other electronic message service, apps, Gmail, Kik, all those different things, or through a commercial online service, intentionally communicates in a sexually explicit manner with a minor or distributes sexually explicit material to a minor. So that's the other half of what the first part about the meetup was. This one's discussing about just the communications, talking and sharing. Sometimes these guys get impatient, right? They start out by trying to get their trust. Once they get their trust and you have a line of communication with them, next thing you know, their topic turns a little bit more sexual in nature, maybe not like real hard stuff, but just something lighthearted. What kind of panties do you wear? Random stuff like that. If they get a response that they're looking for, they move on to the next level. If they ask for sexual images and the child says, no, I really don't feel comfortable about that, they get impatient, and sometimes they'll try and move on to see if they can get the kid to feel comfortable if they share something first. So sometimes these predators will share a picture of themselves sexually. And they think, well, if I share one first, then the kid will feel comfortable, they'll be willing to share back with me. So we get it going both ways. So just one of those things. And then we have sexting, okay? This actually happens between kid to kid, from high school to high school, boyfriend to girlfriend, okay? Sexting is the sending of sexual messages, pictures, or videos through cell phones. Even if a teen takes a picture of their own body, the picture can be considered child pornography. It depends on what the image is, right? Told you the difference between child pornography or child nudity. Maybe they just take a picture of themselves in the reflection of the mirror and they're not fully dressed. It's not necessarily child pornography. And I know it sounds weird, but that's how the state law writes it, right? In 2022, a survey from the Washington Post showed that 1 in 4 teens ages 13 and 19 have shared a sexually suggested or nude image of themselves online. So think about that, 1 in 4. Think about all the kids in this room right now. None of y'all have ever done it. I know you never have. Y'all are good kids. But some of your friends probably have, okay? So just giving you guys some stats on where the young kids are at these days, right? And it's only because it's so easy. Every kid has a phone. Almost every kid. My 2 daughters did. And it made it really difficult. But now we say they have to have a phone, or else how am I going to get a hold of them after soccer practice or band practice or whatever? I got to be able to communicate with my kid. I got to be able to know where they're at. By the way, Live 360. If you don't have it, look into it. It's good. We had it on both our daughters' phones. So I know your kids don't like it, but you'll appreciate it. It's an app. Yeah, it's an app, Live 360. You download it on the kid's phone and on your phone, and then wherever your kids go, you'll see where they're going. So wherever their phone goes, wherever their phone goes. You know your kids aren't going to be very far from their phones, right? It's right here, right next, near and dear to their heart. Sending nude images or videos to friends of the victim for money. So sometimes, believe it or not, we've had cases where juveniles, young teenagers, are sending and making money using their own images and videos. Now, that's not against the law for the kid. It's against the law if you receive it and keep it, and you're an adult. So, online enticement. Online enticement involves the individual communicating with someone believed to be a child via the internet with the intent to commit a sexual offense or abduction. This is a broad category of child exploitation and includes sextortion, which is a child being groomed and taken sexually explicit images and or ultimately meet face-to-face with someone for sexual purposes, or to engage in sexual conversation online, or in some instances, to sell, trade the child's sexual images. This type of victimization takes place across every platform of social media, messaging apps, gaming platforms, etc. Just remember, the internet is worldwide. Your child is here in Austin. Your predator could be Philippines, could be Nigeria. And I'll get more in detail with that later about some cases I've worked. Red flags. The most common tactic used to elicit children include engaging in sexual conversation, playing as a grooming method rather than a goal. Am I reading that? Yeah, it's a little bit bright. Sorry. Asking the child for sexually explicit images of themselves or mutually sharing images. Like I said, it's back and forth, right? They'll share some images of themselves, hoping that they convince the child to share some back. Developing rapport through compliments, discussing shared interests, or liking their online posts, also known as grooming. Sending or offering sexually explicit images of themselves, pretending to be younger. Offering incentives such as a gift card, alcohol, drugs, lodging, transportation, and food. So those last two, okay, pretending to be younger. It's not always the case. And I have a case study of one of the cases I worked where the guy was young. He was like 26-year-old, and he kept telling all of the children that he was messing around, trying to groom, that he was 36 years old. And I think that was because he thought if he was older, they might think that he had more money or more well-respected. Not exactly sure. I can't get in the mind of that, but that's something we're also seeing. So, but sometimes they'll start out pretending that if they're talking with a 14-year-old, they might say, hey, I'm 16. And then the more they engage in conversation, they said, well, actually, I'm 24. But by then, the child has already been communicating with them long enough that they feel comfortable. The age thing, doesn't really matter. He's just trying to befriend me, right? The last one of the incentives, gift cards, also worked a case where the guy would ask for things, and then he would use Amazon and send the child Amazon gift cards. So the child was receiving basically payment for sharing the images. And believe it or not, the child in the text thread was asking, hey, when are you going to send me another Amazon card? Okay, the risk factors. Certain online behaviors may increase the risk for online enticement and becoming a victim of sextortion. These behaviors include lying about being older in order to access certain platforms, which would allow communication with older individuals. That first one, that's talking more about your online dating sites. Tinder. Some of your kids, not your kids, but there's some kids out there that will create an account because there's no proof that you're over 18. You just have to agree. Click agree. I'm over the age of 18. Now you can create an account and you can get on these online dating platforms like Tinder, and your child is 15, 16 years old, pretending to be over the age of 18 or 18 and older in order to message and chat and possibly meet up. And generally, what I've seen is most people on the adult dating sites, when they find out that they're chatting with the juvenile, because at some point it comes out, they usually say, hey, sorry, I'm out. But there are some out there that do not. So, and I have a list of some of those sites later on, I'll show you. Initiating online communication and or offering an exchange with offenders such as requesting financial compensation. We're going to kind of discuss that, right? Sending explicit photos or videos known as sexts of oneself to another user. And we've already kind of discussed that as well, right? So these are basically all these risk factors or things that you should be aware of. This is what is going on in the young kids' minds today. I wanted to put this NCMEC little graph up here to show you. In 1 year, from 2019 to 2020, online enticement reports went up almost 100%. Now, that was 2020. Where are we at in 2024? How much do you think that's changed in the last 3 years? It's probably exponentially higher than that. And I know it is because my caseload grows every year. So earlier I mentioned NCMEC, and I'm going to tell you about it right now. National Center for Missing and Exploited Children is a private, nonprofit 501c3 corporation whose mission is to help find missing children, reduce child sexual exploitation, and prevent child victimization. NCMEC works with families and victims, private industry, law enforcement, and the public to assist with preventing child abduction, recovering missing children, and providing services to deter and combat child sexual exploitation. Like I said, it's a private company, but NCMEC is also the clearinghouse for all known CSAM material, so child pornography. Anytime that there's child pornography shared and a case investigated, and that child pornography image or video is confirmed to be of a real victim, that image or all those images get held in a database that they control. The reason why they do that is because a little known fact is that every image that you take of anything, whether it's a picture out the window of the trees, every picture has its own unique identifier. So every picture is unique. It's like a fingerprint. And so when you identify an image of child pornography and it's put in that database, they don't share the images, but they share those identifiers. It's called a hash value. Those hash values are shared to all of the social media companies out there. So when someone who's uploading or downloading child pornography from the internet and they're using any social media or anything, whether it's a Google email, a Telegram chatting, Kik, you name it, any of those social media apps, if they upload an image or a video that is of known child pornography, that hash value is flagged because they have algorithms in all of those companies that flag known child pornography. That's when they are required by federal law to generate what's called a cyber tip. Those cyber tips get routed to, with a little bit of investigation on their part, ends up getting routed to the nearest law enforcement agency. And then that's when we start our investigations. In a NCMEC analysis of online enticement report, 98% of reported offenders were seemingly unknown to the child. So basically that means 98% of the time that a child was enticed, some random person that they'd never met. Wasn't a family member, wasn't a close friend of the family's, some random person that just groomed them and got them to feel comfortable to the point where they were willing to provide that person with sexual images. In the same NCMEC analysis of online enticement reports, 78% of the reported victims were female, 13% were male, and 9% reports gender could not be determined. What that means is just when the report was generated, there was not a gender, male or female, placed on the report. So they couldn't figure out where to put those, okay? So they just got a 9%. So does that show you that a lot of these guys are going after your little young ladies, okay? Young men are targeted too, but young ladies are by far the biggest target. So NCMEC has is a place to create a report. Since 1998, NCMEC has operated the Cyber Tips hotline to provide the public and an electronic service provider with the ability to report suspected child sexual exploitation, including online enticement of children for sexual acts. See, extra-familial child sexual molestation, child pornography, child sex tourism, child sex trafficking, unsolicited obscene materials sent to children, misleading domain names and misleading words or digital images on the internet. After NCMEC's review is completed, the cyber tip report is made available to the appropriate law enforcement agency. I put that right there in yellow because I want everybody in this room to have that available to them. That is the reporting hotline. If you come across any material on your child's phone that is online solicitation, first of all, I hope you call 911 and make a report. But secondly, you can call that cyber tip, and this PowerPoint's been given back here so you guys can get a copy of it if you need it. That website is given so you can actually get online and make a report yourself. Now what'll end up happening is if you've made a 911 report with us, that cyber tip will make its way back around and eventually come to us. The problem with the cyber tips is they're a little bit slower because it takes them time to do their investigation to find out where that originated from. I must be honest with you guys. A cyber tip where the crime is committed is not where your child lives. The crime is committed where the suspect or the predator lives. So your child lives here, you can make the report here and we will investigate it. But if we find out that the predator lives in, I don't know, Illinois, Massachusetts, California, most of the time, our county does not do where they will basically, if we send out an arrest warrant, they do not bring the offender back here. They just won't extradite. That's the term I'm looking for. They do not extradite, okay? So when we get a case where your child has been offended by someone who lives way out of state, what we'll do is we'll contact the local agency in that area of whatever town or county that person lives in, and we will hand that case off to them. And we've done that multiple times. We try and wrap up a nice, neat package so that they don't have to do a lot of work when it comes to them, other than just verify that the person lives at the address that we discovered. And then hopefully they want to work it and take it, arrest the guy, and move on. Now I say guy because all my online solicitation cases only ever been guys. I'm not saying women wouldn't do it, I'm just saying I don't have those. I haven't seen one yet. Now I have seen some women do child pornography, but as far as the solicitation, it's been pretty much all men. This is the federal law I was telling you guys about. I know kind of getting some boring stuff, but this is the federal law that requires all social media and all online, any kind of operating system, whether it's Amazon, I don't care what it is. If it's internet-based and they discover that they've got child pornography, that law compels them to report it. This right here is also an amazing tool. This link here, that's on NCMEC's website. That website right there is resources for you parents. I don't really even know how to explain what all the different resources there are, but you can log in, go to that website, and there's all kinds of resources for counseling if your child's the victim of any kind of a online solicitation or child pornography. You can go on there, and they provide all kinds of tools and stuff like that for all kinds of various things. Here's a list, just a quick rundown. This is not all of them, just a quick little list of things that I was able to just pick out real quick. There's tons more, but these are some social media applications that you might find on your children's phone. Some are very common that you've seen, some are not so common. I put some in there that kind of show you that there are dating sites. That Grindr is a dating site. That Scout is a dating site. Bumble. Where's the other one? Tinder. Yeah, that's what I was looking for. Thank you. And some of the others. But a lot of those, besides being dating sites, are actually just messaging sites. So that Messenger right there, that goes hand in hand with Facebook. That's the actual chatting app for Facebook. So a lot of kids will get on Reddit. That Discord server, they'll let you put anything on Discord if you don't know what Discord is. So this brings me to something that's kind of new. Okay, you know what? I'm actually glad you brought that up because I meant to talk about that. I got it. So she asked, what is calculator? Kids may not want me to tell you guys this. There's an app that they can download that looks like a calculator. And you click on it and open up the app, and it looks just like the calculator on your phone. But you go in there and you type in the code as if you're typing up an equation, and it opens up a secret hidden place where they can store photos and other kinds of stuff on their phone. So it allows them, because you look at the app and think, oh, it's just a calculator app that they downloaded so they can do better in math at school. I'm struggling with algebra. So, no, they're not. I'm not saying that the calculator app that's built in that comes with your phone, but there is a calculator app. It looks like a calculator. So just be aware of that. Something I thought I'd put in there. So, creation of AI-generated content. This is kind of new. AI is pretty new on scene, but it's growing fast, and it's growing so fast that even law hasn't really been able to keep up with what to do with it, right? They have the ability now for these child pornography purveyors to create completely fake images of child pornography. And what does the federal law say? Federal law says that in order for it to be classified as child pornography, it has to be of a live victim, a real victim. So, if someone creates an AI-generated video or image of child pornography, federal law, I don't think is caught up with it yet. And the hard part is, we're still struggling to figure out how to determine whether that's a real image or AI-generated. Now, once again, you get the one thing we have on our side is technology allows us to find that every image that's taken by your phone with the camera has that hash value. AI generated, It's just an image that was generated by a computer program. So it shouldn't have that hash value, correct? So we have some tools that help us find it out, but it's not until we go through and can run all of that data that we can find out the ones that are real from the ones that are fake. So, and there is a state law here in Texas that has attempted to cover that. I don't have it up here, apologize for that. But they did a rewrite of it, and if someone takes an actual image, face of a child, and they use AI software to undress the child and make the child nude, or to move that face onto an actual image of someone else that's nude or in a sexual position or sexual kind of content, the state of Texas has said, okay, now that's child pornography. And the reason why they've done it is because that's a real child's face. That's a real child that you just basically computer generated or computer re-imaged to make into child pornography. So Texas has gone far enough to make that against the law. So we're good there. We're seeing a little bit of that more along the lines in revenge stuff that we see classmates doing to each other, okay? Because they have applications now where they can take someone they're mad at and they can move it over and they can make it look like they're nude, and then they can share it to other people and be like, see, hey, look what I got of her, right? So it's kind of a revenge thing. You get mad at somebody at school, I'll show them. It's a fake image, but it's still, now you've created child pornography. So this is where I got into what am I going to talk about as far as stuff that can kind of, provide you guys with real world examples of what I see on a daily basis. And so I came up with, that second one is actually a couple of different cases, but the first one is one of the first cases I actually worked. That was a guy who was living here in Austin, and he reached out to what he believed was the 13-year-old girl and began communicating with her. What he didn't know was that 13-year-old girl was actually a detective in Newbury, Massachusetts, at their police department, who had created one of those accounts that I was telling you about. And so he was doing proactive policing for this. And so what happened was they communicated back and forth enough that he didn't, because it was a police detective that was doing the communicating, he couldn't send anything inappropriate to the guy. But remember I told you, sometimes they get a little bit antsy. They think, okay, maybe I need to initiate this. So he sends a picture of his privates. Then, because he's the smartest guy we know, he decides, I'm going to send a picture of my face. And he mentions that he lived in Austin, Texas. Wow, this guy's brilliant. I like this guy. So now the investigators there in the Newbury, Massachusetts Police Department, he starts doing some digging, and eventually he finds, because he's got the accounts, they're chatting back and forth on a social media account, which I think at this point in time initiated over Kik. So he knows what the Kik's username is for the suspect, and so he does his research and finds out who the account belonged to, and lo and behold, it belongs to a guy whose last name is Budlong. And he takes that and finds out, oh, that guy does live in Austin, and here's his address. Well, just like I told you, he lives in the detectives in Massachusetts, they may not extradite, but he takes that nice, neat little case and he wraps it up in a nice, neat little package and sends it to me. And I take it and I'm like, okay, well, there's not a whole lot left for me to do, but go by that guy's address and see if he lives there. So I drove by and there was a car in the driveway, so I ran the license plate. Comes back to, who do you think? My guy. So he does live there. So, interesting thing happened with this case was I had gotten onto 2 or 3 other cases that I needed to get some stuff done on. I knew the guy lived there. I knew he wasn't going to go anywhere for a little bit. So 3 weeks passed by while I was sending search warrants and subpoenas and stuff to other cases that I had. And in the meantime, he had up and moved with his parents because he was living with his mom and dad. He up and moved. And I'm like, oh, what am I gonna do now? Where'd he go? How am I gonna find this guy? He just moved. I have no idea where he lives. And I thought, man, I screwed up. I should have gone and got that guy right away. But I just thought maybe, just maybe. So I reran his driver's license, and wouldn't you know, he's the only guy in the state of Texas that follows the law and updates his driver's license within 30 days of his address. I mean, this guy's brilliant. I mean, I'm Barney Fife over here stumbling around, and this guy's making it so easy for me, right? So this guy had moved to Denton. So me and another detective went to Denton, got with the Denton Police Department, and picked him up. And shortly after he gets arrested, I'm still processing and finishing the final stuff on the case, and I get a phone call from a detective in El Paso. And he says, hey, are you investigating a guy named with the last name of Budlong? And I said, yeah, actually I just arrested the guy, and I'm working on finalizing some of the stuff. And he goes, well, he's the suspect in my case down here for a 14-year-old girl who he's been messaging down here. I'm like, really? When did that happen? Well, it had happened between the time I started investigating and the time that he had initiated the first contact with the people in Newberry. So sometime in that window, he had been reaching out to this little girl as well. The difference is, with this little girl, he was actually providing her with payment to send him stuff. Now, she denied. We actually have the Amazon transactions, but she denied sending him any images, which we couldn't locate, and thankfully so. But we couldn't find any images, so he was paying her. I don't know what he was receiving, but it was enough between the communications between the two that I charged him again for a separate case. He had already been released from jail, which, by the way, they transported him all the way from Denton to Travis County. He gets out, goes home, and then I cut the new arrest warrant for him, so they pick him up again and roll him out again. So he got to go to jail twice. I think he deserved it. So his case, believe it or not, and this should make all of you angry, but here in Travis County, he got deferred adjudication. Don't do that again. No jail time. He's a 26-year-old male, so he's an adult, knows better, and we just give him a slap on the wrist. Now, as a detective, does that make me mad? It does. But I can't get mad about every case. That's not my side of the house. I just do my job. I go make the arrest and then let the attorneys and the judges handle it from there. This last case, or last set of cases, these are a little bit different, okay? These are the online solicitations, okay? These two cases right here were generated here in Austin by parents who had come across some messaging that their children were having. And remember I was telling you about sextortion and how the kids will get groomed, they'll get comfortable, and they'll send out an image, and then bam, within like 5 minutes, they get a message back that says, now, you will send me $200, or I'm gonna post this to all your friends. And they provide evidence that they know who their friends are. So the kids are like, oh no. I can't get around school. What am I gonna do now? They give them $200. And then it doesn't end. So now they're freaking out. They gotta eventually tell mom and dad, even after they've given up all the money in their savings account. So I get the case and I start doing some investigation. Both of these cases are identical, by the way, just two different victims. As I'm doing investigations, I'm sending out subpoenas and search warrants to the accounts that had reached out to the kids. And I come across evidence that shows these accounts originated, one originated in the Philippines and one originated in Nigeria. You know what that means? My case, my investigation ends right there. And the reason why it ends right there is because we don't have reciprocal jurisdiction where they will cooperate with us, and we don't have any assets there. We don't have the ability to find out what the address is. We know it's coming from an IP address that's in that country. We know there's a phone number that was used as a backup for the account in case the account was lost. They have a phone number, and every phone number, area code, state code, and country code is at the beginning of a phone number. That's how I found out that these guys were based out of foreign countries. So when that happens, I don't have anything left to do but call the parents up and say, hey, I'm sorry, I've done as much as I can, but your child was duped and conned into giving money to somebody who lives in another country, and I can't do anything about it. I can't get the justice for the family. So we have to be very careful, because that's the new con, right? These foreign actors in these other countries are preying on these young kids. They're preying on your children. And they're preying on your children to make money. And it's a very big money-making deal, because once you get the child to cough up one image, it doesn't even have to be that bad of an image, just something that the child is embarrassed about. And they're going to use it. So that's one of the biggest things. And I put the two up there from the Philippines and Nigeria, but just want you to know that's not the only two countries. I've had probably more than I count on two hands that I've had to close because I just can't work them any further. Okay. Oh, go ahead. You talking about going through the feds instead of doing from a local standpoint?
Thanks. Where it becomes a point where you can't, because they're overseas or what have you, your investigation stops and you can't do much about it. Is there opportunity to refer to federal authorities?
There is. I mean, y'all have heard of Interpol, correct? Okay, Interpol is an international policing agency, and they do these kind of investigations. The problem with going through like Interpol is having one child, they're not going to go and do an investigation for one child. Interpol is looking for big fish that have a ring, so, like a criminal ring, where they are doing things on a mass scale, and they are, now they would go after these people if I passed it on and they found out, oh, those same people have done it 300 times or 400 times, and they may have. But with the resources we have, we're just very limited. And Interpol's not going to take every single case. Because think about it, I've already told you I've turned down at least 10 and probably more. I just haven't counted them all. And I'm just one detective in one department in all of the United States. And Interpol would have to do the United States, Great Britain, I mean, you name any other country that they associate that cooperates with Interpol, right? And our FBI is not going to do it because the FBI's hands are tied with all the other things that they're working here. And by the way, the FBI, every one of these cases that I work that's online solicitation or even child pornography, those cases are all shared. Everything's done over the internet, which means it's done across state lines, right? That puts it as technically anything that the FBI, the federal government, could get involved in. But they work these cases. They work a lot of them. And sometimes we will work with the FBI if we come across, for example, we had a case not too long ago, stumbled in my lap actually. I had a daycare up off of 183 contact me and said, hey, somebody is emailing our daycare. And actually they were calling them, and then when they got done calling, they started texting sexual images of children to that daycare. Well, their text line translates to an email. So if they don't answer the phone, or if somebody texts to their phone number, it just translates that to an email. So their emails were filling up with all these child pornography images and stuff like that. So I started investigating that case. And eventually investigated it to the point where I came up with a name, and I found the guy. Well, I'm sitting in my office one day, and I'd said something out loud, and there was about 3 or 4 of the other detectives in there, and I mentioned the guy's name. I was like, man, I'm working this case, and this guy, my suspect, his name is such and such. And one of my fellow detectives was like, what'd you say his name was? And I mentioned his name, and they're like, I've got 4 cyber tips on that guy right now that I'm investigating. And they link the cyber tips together because every time he uploads or that guy uploads to a different social media site, that's a different cyber tip that's created. And so you have to understand, I took the case as a 911 call. His came in through NCMEC as cyber tips. Well, we have another detective. His only job is not to investigate cases. His job is to take in all the cyber tips and start issuing them out. And he does reviews of each one of them before he sends them out to each one of us. At that point, he doesn't know who's who, right? He's just getting cyber tips. Well, he sent 4 that were linked to the same social media accounts to this one detective. He had sent like 4 or 5 more to another detective in our office. So 3 of us were investigating and doing the same guy. And it just happened to come out that way because I mentioned his name, they'd already discovered his name, and the only step we had left was we were trying to figure out where he was. Where did he live? Well, interestingly enough, somehow the FBI reached out to us and said, and this is an FBI agency out of field office out of, I want to say like St. Louis or somewhere. They reached out to us and said, hey, are you investigating a so-and-so? We're like, yeah, like 3 of us in this office are. And they said, yeah, we're investigating him too, but we're investigating him for hundreds of things. So come to find out, he did live here in Austin, and we ended up getting together with the FBI field office here, and we gave all of our case material to them, and then some of our detectives went with them and picked him up. When they went to his house, remember I was telling you guys about terabytes? He had hard drives in his house with terabytes of stuff. And anybody that knows anything about electronics, terabytes is a lot. Yes, sir, go ahead.
Can you, do you handle cases where children are being exploited over the internet to be led into sex trafficking? Because that's something that's pretty big right now.
Absolutely.
And I think that's something our young people need to hear about.
I'll be honest with you, I was just sitting with, I was working patrol, we're doing backfill to support the patrol guys, and I was on a homicide case that happened in South Austin earlier today. And I was talking with another detective who was also, remember I was saying we used to be associated with the human trafficking unit. And so she and I were talking, and I told her I was giving this class, and she said, hey, I should come up there and be available in case there was any questions about human trafficking. I should have invited her up here. She knows more about it than I do. I'm sorry. She was kind of stuck on the homicide case, but with that, yes, absolutely. We investigate a lot of that stuff. And what happens is, a lot of times we don't discover that they're trafficked. We discover they discover the trafficking because that's their job. They do that. And while they're investigating the trafficking, they find out that the person who's trafficking the girl is also uploading sexualized images and videos that they have either made with the child or that someone else made and they videotaped. And so yes, those two go kind of hand in hand, and what'll happen is they will usually take all of it and work all of it. So once they get the human trafficking side, they just add the charges for the child pornography to the arrest. So they're charged with not only human trafficking, but they're charged with the child pornography that was created. I did have a case that's very similar to what you're talking about that happened in the reverse. Had a guy that was, I'd got a cyber tip on him, and he had been uploading child pornography to several different accounts. So I start investigating, I find out who he is. I go to find out where his address is, find out that he had moved, but he'd moved to some place in Hayes County, and I don't remember exactly why I did it. I there was, for whatever reason I did, I contacted Hayes County Sheriff's Department and asked them about the guy, and they said, that guy is currently in Hayes County Jail for unrelated charges. And it had to do with road rage incident where he pulled out a gun and started shooting all bullets in the air at whoever he was road raging at. So he got arrested and he's being held for that. So I go and start interviewing him. I go down to the Hayes County Jail. They set us up in an interview room, and I spent an hour and a half interrogating and interviewing this guy. He admits to the child pornography, and then near the end of the interview, of course, this guy's crying, which, if you've never seen a grown man, it's basically what it is they know that what they've been doing their whole entire time is wrong, and it's like a huge release, and they're getting all of it off their chest because they're guilty. They feel guilty about doing it, and so they want to release it. So he's crying multiple times. I actually stopped the interview once, went out and got him a bottle of water, brought it back in. He commences again to going back into some of it. And near the end of the interview, probably about the last 20 minutes, he starts telling me about this girl. So he's working on this ranch out there in Hayes County. And he's living on the ranch in some guest quarters. And he's living out there, and they have a 15-year-old daughter. And he starts trying to develop a relationship with this girl, and she's responding. And next thing you know, he's telling me that she wants to get into being, and of course, these are his words. I never interviewed her, but he's saying that she wants to get into prostituting herself for money because she wants to make money. And he said, well, I couldn't talk her out of it, so therefore I felt like it was my duty to protect her, so I was going to basically watch over her as she did it. Right? Anybody believe that? No, of course not. But that's what he was telling me. He was going to watch over her. Not like he was going to take a cut of any of it or anything, just want to make sure she wasn't going to get hurt while she was doing it. We ended up wrapping up our interview, and I immediately contacted the Hayes County detectives, and I said, hey, I got all the information I needed for my case. However, this guy just started admitting to me that he's been doing some trafficking in your jurisdiction, and there's probably more victims besides the one that he was mentioning to me. You guys probably need to go down and re-interview this guy. They set up a interview and went up there to interview. Well, he was super sick. And when they talked to him, he goes, look, guys, I'm sorry, I don't feel very well, and can we just reschedule this interview for later? They're like, sure, why not? And they said, legitimately, he looked really, really, really bad, like really bad. Well, 2 days later, I get a notification from my department that says, hey, there's certain documents that we were requesting through our fugitive apprehension unit that they said, oh, we don't need those anymore. Your subject is deceased. I'm like, what? I just talked to that guy 2 days ago. Well, I called the detectives at Hayes County, and come to find out, he killed himself in prison. Want to know how? He had taken apart a tablet that they had been using to allow the inmates to send emails and stuff, took apart the tablet, peeled open the battery, and ate the lithium. At least that's what I was told. I don't have the official coroner's results, but that's what I was told. So going back to the interview I had with him, the first thing he said to me, he asked me, so are you the one that filed the charges for child pornography on me? I said, yep, that's me. He goes, that kind of stuff will get me killed in prison. And I told him, I said, you know what? I'm here to investigate the crime. I don't get to choose what your punishment's going to be. Well, he chose for himself. So, anyways, not to leave this on a down note. Maybe a better question to get us back up. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
You mentioned earlier that in one of the cases, the 24-year-old was just given a slap on the wrist. And so I was real curious in what your opinion was, the sort of climate here in Travis County. Are those cases easily prosecuted? Are we letting people off? easy? Are we looking the other direction?
In my opinion, yes, we're letting people off too easy. These crimes are, they're victimizing your children. You're stealing your children's innocence, okay? Any kid that's in a video or image of child pornography, that child has been victimized and their innocence has been stolen right then and there. And every time some other predator re-watches or reviews that image, that's another victimization. The child may not know that they're being re-victimized, but every single time that someone views an image, it's another victimization of that child. So, in my opinion, yes, I think that we are a little bit soft. I think, and by the way, when we turn in our cases are not speculative, right? So if someone robs a house, there's not a lot of evidence, but we have a video that shows some guy running away from the scene or whatever, those detectives have a harder time proving whether that person did it or this person did it. In my cases, I know without a doubt that IP address goes to your house, that account belongs to you, and I don't send an arrest warrant out to anybody that I'm not 99% sure that that's the person who's doing it. Okay. So, with that being said, our cases are almost always prosecutable. So, and we don't get a lot, and I'm not saying it's not possible, but we don't get a whole lot of cases where I have to sit in front of a jury and explain the case in gruesome detail. Because by the time I hand the evidence over and show the prosecuting attorneys what I have found, the defense attorneys usually come in and they want to plead out. Now, what the plea deals are and what that goes on, that's beyond me. I don't get to work that side of it. That's the prosecutor's office and the defense attorneys and the judges. So, you know, like I said, I would like to see these guys go away for 5 years minimum, every single one of them. But just remember, and I believe this with my whole heart, people that are into child pornography or that are into your children, online solicitation of any kind, whatever it may be, I don't believe that's just, hey, I just had a bad day. These people, I believe, truly in my heart have a mental illness, and you can't reform that. So when they get out in 5 years, they're coming back for your kids, okay? Can't stress that enough.
Okay, Mike, I have two questions. One is the proactive and reactive investigation. How long does it normally take to investigate a case, and the success rate in catching the predator? And also, like the sale of a child, when a parent does that, is that child brought back into the home if the child is found again? And what is done to the parent?
So with your last question, I'll answer that real quick. What'll happen with if there's a sale of a child by the parents, if it's both parents, then we try and find the next closest relative that is safe to put the child with. Well, we don't. Child Services does that. And they will try and find a child, hopefully with a relative that they know and are comfortable with. And by the way, they are vetted, so it's not like we just go, here, this kid's now yours. We vet the relative, and that's kind of where we go with that. We do not put the children, well, CPS is not supposed to put the children back in the home, okay? If it's one parent and the other parent didn't know about it, it's kind of rare, then the other parent might get custody. If they're separated maybe, the other parent would get the custody, okay? But that also depends on what was the reason why they were separated, correct? If they were separated because of family violence, well, obviously we can't put the child in a home that's prone to family violence, right? So there's all kinds of factors. Second one about the proactive and reactive, about how long those cases take. It just depends on how cooperative the social media people are. If I send out a subpoena or a search warrant and I say, hey, I need this back in 2 to 3 weeks, and usually I put a date on there like, hey, I'd really like to have it back by here. They may not get back to me for 2 months. So our cases, this unfortunate part about our cases is our investigations take sometimes 3 months, sometimes 6 months. I have had a case on a guy that I just actually put an arrest warrant out. His case started back in December of 2023, and I just was able to get the warrant out for him. We are at the mercy of this, and the problem is everything is step by step. So if I send a subpoena to the very first thing I can get, which might be his user account for, let's say, Kik gives me back everything that they have on that user, all of his provider information. Did he give an email address? What IP address did he have when he was using that Kik account? Stuff like that. Well, that gives me my next journey in my investigative trip, right? Now I'm sending a subpoena or a search warrant to the email address, whether it's Google or Yahoo or whatever, and then I'm sending one out to whatever provider has that email address. It might be Charter, it might be I don't know, Google Fiber. So whatever IP address and whoever owns that, I have to send out that. Then I have to wait on that stuff to come back. So I've got 5 or 6 cases that I work at simultaneously, and sometimes some just sit over here and bake for a little bit because I'm waiting and waiting. Well, and then I turn my attention to other ones. That's why I mentioned about 3 weeks had gone by. I should have gone and got that guy, but I was like, I need to get this stuff sent out, because if I don't get it sent out, I might be waiting even longer for these other cases. So our cases, by and large, tend to take a little while. They're clean and neat when we finally get all the evidence back, and we can pretty much provide that to the DA and say, there's your guy. And we go pick him up, and we take him to jail, and then they bond him out, and then however long it takes them to adjudicate him. So that's kind of how that works. Yes, ma'am. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Okay, Detective Adams, first of all, I want to say thank you for taking the time, because our children need to hear this. So my first question is, obviously you've shared with us when you're successful in prosecuting the perpetrator, and that's good. For our young people who are in their teens, who are engaging in enticing the perpetrator, when are they prosecuted, if at all?
They're not.
They're not.
They're not.
Are they ever punished and brought in to the point where they understand that something can happen to them, their records in school, trying to get a job?
That's where you as the parent comes in.
Okay.
So when we have young kids that, and I'm not saying the kids reach out to them, right? I'm saying the perpetrator might reach out to them, but they reciprocate and engage back to the point where, like that one girl was accepting the Amazon gift cards, right? On her side, there's nothing wrong. Unfortunately, the law does not say that it is illegal for the child to reciprocate or respond back, because she might, we look at it like this. The child was groomed and sometimes tricked, that's what you want to look at it, because they're vulnerable, into giving up images. And just because they gave one up freely and then chose to say, well, you know what, I might do this some more. They're kind of victims, really, and we want to look at them as that. We want to see these children as victims, because the adults are the ones preying on them, and we have to go and get those adults because they know better. Our children are still developing and still learning. Minds aren't 100% there like an adult's mind is. I think the statistics say that an adult mind is not fully developed until, 26, 23, 26, something like that. So we don't want to victimize children. So what we do is we just turn that over to the parents and say, hey, however you choose to punish your child for this as a parent, that's your business.
I understand. And the other question I had was, when you were describing, because you have so many cases, it's a question of which one do you go after. You use the term worst. What constitutes worst?
It's the magnitude. So, I'm referring to this as cyber tips and child pornography, because we get so many of those cyber tips in a day. Like our detective told me like a week or two ago that in one day he got 40 cyber tips just in one day. We can't, if we get 40 cyber tips every day, there's only 7 of us. And some of us are specifically focused on the cases that are generated by you all, the citizens of Austin. Those come in a different way. Those don't come in as cyber tips. So we have to focus on those too. And actually, those take precedence for me more, because those are local. somebody here is a victim in this town. So we've got officers that focus on those cases, which are 911 calls. We call them Versadex cases. And then we got some that are the cyber tips. Now, by and large, there's way more cyber tips that come in. So we vet those. If there's an account that only has 2 images that were reported. But over here, we have this case that just came in on the same day, and it's got 100. We give the one over here priority over this one here because it's, by and large, going to show that this person is way more prolific in what they're doing. Not that we don't want to work the one, we just don't have the manpower to work every single one of those. So we have to kind of work our way through what we can. Now that's a different thing with the Versadex. Every Versadex case gets worked, and every Versadex case gets the same amount of attention. Some come up like the one I was just showing you from the Philippines and Nigeria. I get to a point where I just can't go any further. And so I have to close those cases and move them off to the side, and then I get another case and I start with a new one. So, you know, we just, all of them will get worked to the end, to where you find a dead end, or all of them will get worked to where I find a suspect and make an arrest.
So just a question, to the ones that don't serve time, are they required to register the sex offender list? That way we can go into that?
So the one young man that I was telling you about, he was required to register.
So they are required, most of them?
I'm not saying everyone is. I don't get to see all the adjudications. Honestly, I don't see any of them. The only reason why I know about his adjudication is I wanted to find out what his case, where his stood before I came up and talked about it, because I didn't want to talk about a case that might still be pending going through the court system, because I don't want to taint any of the cases that prosecutors might currently be working. And if I'm up here talking about it, I might say something that might undo something that the DA's office is working on. So.
Real quick, sorry.
Oh, go ahead.
Thank you so much. I think this was very informative, and I think I'll say my question first and then continue, but how can we help? I know education is a big part of it, so thank you for making us more aware of the magnitude of this problem. I think we're all aware of how bad it is. I mean, we see the commercials, we hear the news, we hear the problems, but I think sometimes hearing it kind of one-on-one like we had just now is a big help. But what else can we do? Is there any legislation that's on the table that we can help and push that effort forward? What can we do?
Obviously, anything that makes this crime or this criminality more of a focal point. I mean, we all know that, you know, murder cases and ag assaults and all that, those are high profile cases because somebody's getting injured. These children are getting injured. We need to make that a priority, right? So obviously, yes, you're 100% correct. Voices need to be voiced to your representatives and your state senators. That needs to be talked about. Your local representatives up here in the city council. We got a new city manager. We're working on a new police chief. These kind of cases need to be important. And honestly, we could use more detectives. We've got so many cases that we could, if you added 5 more detectives, we'd still probably have to turn some cases away, unfortunately, cyber tips. The manpower and the amount of that stuff that's going on out there is mind-blowing. So, I mean, yes, the more we get the attention on these kinds of crimes, and the fact that it's growing, I showed you like that one slide that I showed you, just from 1 year, it almost went up 100%. So we're just struggling, and more focus and emphasis and more talking about it, especially with you parents. You've got to talk to your children about it. You've got to. It's an uncomfortable topic to have in your house. It's an uncomfortable topic to sit your kids down and say, hey, let me see your phone. So I'm telling you right now, your kids don't want to give up that phone. It may not have anything sexual on there, but you get to see the conversations. That's what they want. They don't want you to see what them and their best friend are talking about. They don't want you to know about that. I'll be honest with you, I don't care about that. Y'all as the parents do. But that's how you stumble across some random predator who's been messaging them, and maybe they've already gotten deep in the weeds, and they're struggling to figure out how they're going to get out of this. They've already given up the image, and someone's already trying to get money from them. You as parents you're the first line of defense for your children. You have to be there. You have to be in the middle of what they've got going on. They don't like it. I'm telling you right now, every one of them is sitting here right now going, I wish he'd shut up and go away. But one of these days, they're going to be parents, and you think it's bad now, wait till they're your age, and they've got kids, and no telling what kind of devices they're going to have. Technology is growing so fast, we can't keep up with it. But I know from whenever I was a kid, the worst thing I had to worry about was getting home before the street light came on, or I was getting worn out. Now, our kids don't even go out under a street light. They stay in their bedrooms, and they spend their time on social media. So, anyways, thank you guys. Appreciate it. Oh, do we have one more? I'm sorry. Go ahead.
So you kind of went exactly where I was going. There was so much information that was shared tonight, so thank you so much for that. We have got an audience filled with parents, and so I would love to know, even if you have 5 tips, things that you recommend, whether it be from ages that phones are given to when social media is allowed to be accessed, how often should that social media be accessed, your thoughts even on friending, and so what would your advice be to parents, knowing all the things that you're seeing and investigating every day and protecting our families?
So the first tip, you were talking about an age. I can't tell you what age you think that is appropriate for your child to have a phone. And the reason why I say a phone is because that's where it all ends. That's where they communicate from. That's where the apps are. I can't tell you. We gave our daughters phones when they started getting into sporting events and things that were going to keep them away a lot. And I needed to be what I thought at the time as a parent that I needed to be able to get in touch with my kids. So I got them both phones, and I was able to track them. Well, not till they got older, and I figured out about that Live 360. But I still have the problem of tracking what they're doing on there. I'm telling you right now, you parents need to see what social media apps are on their phone, and you need to have it. If it's ones that you guys can see what they're posting, like Instagram, Snapchat, Facebook, you should be a friend of theirs on there. You can at least see what they're posting out to everybody else. What's getting sent back to them privately, that's for you to determine whether you decide to go through their phone once a week at random. Don't go like, hey, Saturday night, 7 o'clock, give me that phone. If you do it every Saturday night at 7 o'clock, they're gonna be like, oop, Saturday night at 6:30, swipe it clean. So, and then the other thing that you were talking about, I believe, is friending. Friending is one of those things where I believe kids only need to be friends with people they know. What is the benefit of a kid having a friend that they've never met that lives in Seattle, Washington? You're never going to Seattle, Washington unless you become an adult and then you decide to go there. So why do they need a friend in Seattle, Washington? That's just my opinion, right? So I can't tell you as parents how to parent your children because you're all really good parents. It's what level of involvement are you going to get into? And believe me, I'm telling you right now, my 2 daughters, actually not my second one, she was actually pretty good. But my oldest daughter, I'm bald, and I had a full head of hair before her. Just letting y'all know. But that girl she was a wildcat, right? And she would fight me tooth and nail, and her mother tooth and nail about everything we did. If we asked for the phone, she threw a big fit. Oh, y'all don't trust me. Nope, I don't. Sorry. I don't. And oh, by the way, I'm not your friend. First and foremost, guys, you're not your kids' friends. Your kids need parents. Amen. And that's all they need from you is you to love them and just be their parents because you're their guardians, you're their protectors. They don't know it, but when they become adults, they're going to look back and go, thank you. Because that crazy girl that I raised, she thanks me all the time. Hey, I was mad at you so many times. And I said mean, hateful things to you. But I'm thanking you now. I love you, and I appreciate you looking out for me when I couldn't look out for myself. You guys, believe me, they will. They're sitting there right now going, yeah, it's never going to be me. When they turn 26, they're going to look at you and go, my parents are brilliant. My parents are brilliant. I didn't even know it. I thought they were idiots when I was 16. But they'll thank you. You just be their parent, not their friend. Get involved in their lives, whatever it is. I mean, take social media out of it. Go to their events, go to their functions. Show them that you care. Remember what I said about these kids are attention seeking. They're attention seeking because they need you guys to be there. They need you guys to reinforce what they're involved in, and that you think what they're involved in is just as important as as important as they see it. So that's the advice I can offer you.
Okay, let us thank him again.
Thank you, Sam. Appreciate it. I'm going to leave this up here for you guys.
I know you all have a lot of questions. We all do, and we appreciate the Detective Adams for coming and sharing with us what he has shared with us tonight. It has been beneficial, and I know for every parent it has been somewhat horrifying as well. And for those who are not parents of children, the grandparents now are horrified for our grandchildren. And so it never stops. And so we know that we have a great challenge in the front of us. I'll try to keep this very short because I know our time is far spent. Got to kill the mic, Sister Jackson, Sister Maxine. Sister, you need to kill the mic. Your mic is still on. That's okay. I could hear it. I don't want you to say something you don't need to say. Amen. You know, that open mic, live mic can get you in trouble. All right. Thank you so much. There were a million things that came to mind, and, tons of scriptures that came to mind. And, Deuteronomy 6, one of the things we have to understand is that God wants us to be involved with our children, and he wants us to be involved with them constantly, always teaching, always working with them, always touching them, always letting them know how important they are to us and how much we love them, and always sharing with them principles about God and about life and about living. And that's the essence of Deuteronomy chapter 6. You teach them as they live life through everyday opportunities. It's not always about sitting them down, opening up the text. You are a walking, living text. You are teaching them about God all the time. And then, of course, I think about what Malachi said. Malachi talks about the coming of the Lord, and he talks about, in this chapter 4, and he says in verse number 5, behold, I will send you Elijah the prophet before the great and awesome day of the Lord comes. And he will turn the hearts of the fathers to their children and the hearts of the children to their fathers. And some say parents as versus fathers, lest I come and strike the land with a decree of utter destruction. A degree of utter destruction. So here's what you need to see, that when there is a divide between the parents and the children, when there's no relationship, then God says a curse is going to be upon the earth, that there will be destruction. And what is he trying to tell us? That our relationships matter. That if parents don't get involved with their children, the world suffers. If we don't teach our children to know God, the world gets further and further away from God as each generation comes. And so we have an awesome responsibility to teach our children to know God, not just to say we are Christians in name only, but in reality. I'll close with 1 Peter chapter 5. The Bible tells us that we ought to be sober, to be watchful, because we have an enemy, and he's like a roaring lion. He's walking about seeking whom he may devour. He never stops. And one of the things you know about wildlife, if you've ever watched any of those shows, and I'm sure some of us have, perhaps most of us have, the enemy, a lion, does attack sometimes the strong. But one of the things that you will notice about predators is that they seek for the weakest and the smallest and the youngest because they are the most vulnerable. And they try to cut them out from the herd so that they can destroy them. And that's just like our children. Satan is preying upon our children. And we need to understand that we need to be vigilant. And we don't just, as the detective said, we can't let our children talk us down. You're too mean. You're too controlling. This is my room. You don't pay the mortgage. I'm just trying to say what I'm trying to say. I know people don't like it, but it is what it is. And I think he mentioned this when Mark Twain said, when I was 14 years old, my old man was so ignorant I couldn't stand to be around him. And when I became 21, I was just surprised at how much he had learned in 7 years. Our children don't know. They think they know. But let us be vigilant, but love our children. Love them. They need love. Love them. If you're here tonight, you want prayer, we encourage you to let us know that you are in need of prayer, and we'll pray for you and pray with you. And if you are not a member of the Lord's body and you want to become a Christian tonight, you can do that by believing that Jesus Christ came, suffered, bled, and died for your sins, was buried, and he rose again. He is the Christ, the Son of God. He is the way of salvation. There is no other. And if you want to be saved tonight, you must put your faith in him. You must be willing to repent of your sins, confess his name, and we will baptize you tonight. And the Lord in heaven will save you by his grace, and he'll add you to his church. So if there's anyone here who wants to do that, please come forward and we'll do it tonight. Okay. Brother Shavers is going to give us prayer for the food, but if you would in need of prayer, just be standing at this time. We don't have time to take everyone's personal request. Okay. I don't know what your personal requests are, but I will just pray a general prayer and then let Brother Shavers give a prayer for the food. Thank you. God bless you.